Peterson has a really interesting way of looking at this, and he said it to me once, and it made a lot of sense. He said, people think that you should be weak and you should be docile, and then you should be a pacifist. He goes, no, you should be a monster. He said, you should be a monster, you should be ruthlessly ambitious, and then learn how to control it. And it's that old expression, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It's an old expression, but it makes sense, because it doesn't mean that you can't be kind if you're strong, but it does mean you can't be strong if you're weak. If you're weak, you're fucked.
Budged! And, of course, weak men create bad times, and I think it's very fair to say that we are headed towards an overabundance of some very bad times. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski here of wearechange.org, and we have a lot of absolutely crazy news to get into, as of course we have an ongoing international crisis unfolding in Europe right now that is sending shockwaves financially throughout the entire world, especially here in the United States, with more taxes, more fees, more regulations, more prices going up. What's really going on with all this disinformation and madness? Well, we're going to do our best to try to explain that to you in this video. There's so much news, so we're just going to jump right into it. As of course, we wanted to remind you that not so long ago, the media was hysterically sensationalizing a global sickness, and of course, other divide and conquer, race divisive issues, and now with cases dropping dramatically as we told you they would, and Jussie Smollett behind bars, it's safe to say that those issues are in our rear view mirror for now, as of course, we have a new ongoing crisis that the corporate media will be using more appeal of emotions towards creating scenarios that of course work out for the benefit of their handlers and the interests that they control. Now, throughout the madness of the last 2 years, one of the constant things that we have been talking about is the economy, which I believe is one of the most underreported stories, especially with how significant and impactful that this disastrous situation will be on everyone. And in my opinion, potentially create more poverty, more crime, more debts of despair and life loss than a potential conflict, as of course the people who were cheering for Donald Trump's stimulus checks are now realizing there's a cost for government just printing money out of thin air. Financial trends and impacts usually take a long time to play out and feel the full effects of them, and we have to understand when the government shuts down the global economy, prints $16 trillion, gives handouts and stimulus checks to the American people, corporate bailouts that were even way bigger than that, which of course there's going to be huge ramifications for. We've been seeing the process play out slowly but accelerating very fast, as of course Uber just announced that they're going to be charging a new fuel fee, charging customers an extra 55 cents per ride, 45 cents per food delivery, as of course the fees, shrinkflation, the cost of goods, the cost of energy have been going up dramatically. They are expected to continue to go up, especially during the summer months of this year, and you could definitely expect more hidden fees, surcharges, taxes, hidden bills, add-ons, and more financial trickery coming your way, as of course there is a price for the reckless spending of the politicians that you put in office. Not just, of course, Joe Biden, but Donald Trump himself, who came out today and called the current president of the United States, quote, stupid for crawling around the globe on his knees begging and pleading for oil. This coming from the man that changed his favorite speech and rally song from the YMCA to Hold On, I'm Coming, as of course these were very highly politically charged statements, as many people expect Donald Trump to run for the presidency in the next coming 2 years. Now, his statements were very bombastic, but I think it is very fair to say that the current president of the United States not turning on domestic energy production and asking Venezuela, Iran, and Saudi Arabia to produce more energy unsuccessfully is a ridiculous move that's only going to make the situation globally that much worse for everyone, including, of course, American citizens, that because of these policies are going to have to pay for more energy, more for food, and more for everything else around them. This, as we even have mainstream media reports from NBC News that Saudi Arabia is not even picking up the phone when Joe Biden is calling them. This is the same empire that, according to some sources, has just beheaded 81 people in one day. Yeah, giving those guys more money seems like an absolutely stupid idea, which I've been calling out ever since the early 2000s. And with so many economic problems destroying wealth in the United States, making poor people even poorer, what's the solution from the Biden administration? Well, they're going to hire TikToks in order to sell the American public on not liking the Russians. It's also important to note that there has been a coordinated PR effort by the corporate media trying to blame the financial problems that we are currently dealing with on Russia. And yes, they do play a significant part of it that has made it worse, but this has been a problem that has been brewing for a very long time, even past 2008. And I think it's fair to say that those talking points are absolutely disingenuous, and your tax dollars right now going to TikTokers in order to push American foreign policy edicts are absolutely stupid and a complete and utter waste of your money. But you know what's not a waste of your money? I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm doing this anyway. TheBestPoliticalShirts.com, where you could support this independent media organization by, of course, just simply buying a shirt, doing your part to help spread an important message. And whether it's a stop war, truck yeah, mass formation, psychosis shirt, whatever it is, whatever your discontent with modern society is, we most likely have a shirt that will help you explain it to your fellow Kyle and Karen at the grocery store, where the most amount of important activism can be done one-on-one, mano to mano, person to person, eye to eye, by having civil, interesting political discussions with the people around you. The best way to start those conversations, in my opinion, is to definitely wear a shirt like the one that I'm wearing right now that says I tested positive for freedom. We just released another shirt that's called The Reality of War. And of course, you could get all of these shirts exclusively by going right now to thebestpoliticalshirts.com. The link is down in the description below. Click on it. And even if you're not going to buy anything, window shopping is guaranteed to be absolutely entertaining for you, as we have some very thought-provoking, entertaining shirts that will definitely get you thinking. Now, when it comes to the latest developments of what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, I think it's very fair to say that the situation is getting desperate, especially for a lot of the innocent civilians caught in the middle of this absolute madness. The situation also in Russia is getting severe for a lot of people living in that country that are being punished for the government that represents them. There is a lot of news in the West coming out of demonstrations and protests happening in Russia, with even videos like this coming out specifically showing a woman who was arrested by Russian police officers for holding a sign that was blank and didn't even say anything. Now, it's also important to understand that these sanctions against average Russians are also having the opposite effect, as of course ordinary citizens are being arbitrarily punished by the West, by many multinational corporations, and turning some Russians away from the West and of course their geopolitical interests in the region. The bigger question do we have to ask ourselves, will these sanctions work? Well, historically, sanctions have a very, how would you say, disputed track record, as of course when they were used in Iran and Cuba and Venezuela, they predominantly just hurt more poor people. How will these current sanctions affect Russia and the people there? Well, of course, only time will tell if this pressure against Russia will work. But the situation on the ground there has been made a lot more complicated and that much worse, as we're just finding out that an award-winning American journalist was shot and taken out by alleged Russian troops in a Kiev suburb after, according to this journalist's friend, another reporter, soldiers opened fire on their car at an Irpin checkpoint as they were driving to a refugee crossing checkpoint. Now, we're still learning to find out the details of exactly what happened here, but we're bound to be hearing a lot about this specific story in the next coming days. And as we've been telling you, the reality of war is absolute hell. It is a failure of civilizations, and of course, in the madness and insanity, expect more innocent people to be caught up in it. Expect more tragedy, as we've been telling you that we expect this conflict to go on a lot longer than what many other people have expected. And The Atlantic just a couple hours ago wrote an article pretty much detailing our hypothesis that we talked about last week, with their title to the story that reads, "The war in Ukraine is just the beginning," with the byline that reads, "Conflicts, though typically started easily, can be brutal intractable and difficult to end, and I would absolutely agree, especially from the assessments that I have been seeing on the ground, which I'm going to get into in just a little bit, and of course the escalations that have been happening on both sides, as of course Biden's national security advisor has just promised that the United States will execute appropriate consequences for what just happened to this American journalist that was killed in action. What will be those consequences? Well, it's actually very difficult to say, since it looks like almost the United States pulled out everything that they could against Russia, especially when it came to economic sanctions, especially when it comes to supporting the Ukrainians. What else could the United States do here? I'm left bewildered by that question myself, other than, of course, more dangerous, grave escalations that could entangle more countries in this grotesque conflict. As we said, we hope for de-escalation of this conflict, but we have been seeing nothing but escalations. The president of Poland just came out on the world stage and said if there is going to be the use of chemical weapons inside of Ukraine, this would be the, quote, game changer for NATO, for the United States, and their role in this conflict, essentially laying out the talking points to the latest possible escalations that could happen in this field of war. Again, the language that a lot of politicians are using here is something that we should, of course, pay a lot of attention to. There have been a lot of accusations. There has been a lot of propaganda, a lot of disinformation, and being quite frank with you, it's very hard to decipher who is telling the truth and who, of course, is just trying to push their cause and agenda. Now, The Atlantic made a very good argument detailing how current modern-day conflicts in Ethiopia, Palestine, Kashmir, Syria, and Yemen go on and on with almost a never-ending saga that is continuing to never see the end of the destruction and conflict. They make a good point that Ukraine could turn out in the same kind of fashion. Now, Russia, even though they are losing significant hardware in the territory of Ukraine, are still slowly but surely moving ahead and capturing cities. Not as fast as many people thought they would, as of course there was U.S. intelligence showing that the Russians would have Kiev in a matter of 3 days. That of course didn't happen. As of course there's a theory that the Russians are settling in, building up base camps, and are preparing themselves for a longer haul of this conflict, while of course sending in their alleged Team B into this conflict and not their latest, greatest military hardware, which they are allegedly afraid of losing or preparing for to use in another front of this conflict, or to use it in a last-ditch effort if they have to use it. That is the prevailing theory that we've been hearing. The second theory countering this is that Russia has had an absolute failure of logistics, of planning, that there's far more corruption inside of the Russian military than previously even believed to be so, and that Russian troops have very low morale, don't know what they're doing, and they're absolutely losing this conflict to a heavily armed and prepared Ukraine that has been readying for this since 2014. Now, I think there's elements of truth in both of those theories, and we have to understand we're living in a situation where both of them could be true at the same time, especially with what is clearly Russia still gaining more territory, gaining more towns as the time goes on, as of course the Russian strategy here has been to move in, shell and bomb a city, and then move in, while of course establishing a base camp, establishing supply lines, establishing a situation where they of course are dug in. And this type of fighting is dirty, but it's how this modern warfare is right now being experienced in Ukraine. Men in Ukraine are prevented from leaving the country. Ukraine is also going under martial law. Every man has been told to stay and fight for his country, leaving many documented reports of Ukrainian men cross-dressing, trying to pretend like they're women, trying to, of course, get through the Polish border. And, of course, many of them are being stopped. Many people are being arrested for trying to flee. As, of course, military service is compulsory for majority of males inside of Ukraine. As of course, Ukraine has been preparing for more of an insurgency rebuttal towards the Russians that of course have way more significant hardware than they do. This could be one reason why Russia has had such a slow movement of its troops and supplies that of course are put at risk, as many times they are just being ambushed and taken out. Now we could only guesstimate what's happening there, as of course there's a lot of propaganda, misinformation, not only from the the Russians, but also from the Ukrainians. Everyone is trying to appeal to emotions in order to, of course, galvanize their public to, of course, fight this larger conflict. To me, this is a problem of big, overbearing governments that have way too much power with populations who obey crazy orders, fighting for the political ambitions of men. Now, of course, that's a very gross generalization and simplification of this entire very complex geopolitical situation. But moving forward from here, we can only expect more grave escalations from here. More countries, more powers, more people getting involved here, more innocent civilians getting entangled here, as of course this conflict is getting more serious as Russia looks like it will soon take Kiev in just a matter of days from now, from all the initial reports that we have been seeing. Now, as Russia becomes more isolated, how will they be reacting to these escalations? Well, that's the question that a lot of people are asking themselves. There are photos and videos of Putin using extremely long tables in order to talk to other individuals, like the president of France. There's some reports saying he's doing this because he's afraid of the global sickness that has been going around. There's other people speculating that he's afraid of being poisoned. But whenever you have an insecure or absolutely incompetent or inherent leader of a nuclear power whose fingers could press one button and end it all for all of humanity, you're dealing with an absolutely stupid situation that is just as ridiculous as it is dangerous. That's just my perspective. If you think I'm wrong, if you think I said anything that was incorrect or wrong here, please let me know down in the comment section below. I always appreciate your constructive criticism, especially now during this time of absolute turbulence, disinformation, propaganda, and fake news out there that's more difficult than ever to decipher. We have a lot of information coming in. How much of it is verified? How much of it is true? Who in the world knows? We're doing our best here. And if you thought we did a good job, share this video with your friends and family members, because you do. That's one of the reasons these types of videos still get out there to the general public. But again, one of the best ways of activism is literally just wearing a t-shirt, spreading the message to your fellow Kyles and Karens. Salute to all you amazing human beings who are doing this and being a part of this independent media broadcast. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, and this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.